Everybody in the world is obsessed with LLMs, with generative AI, agentic AI, genetic AI. How is BlackDuck looping all this information into their solutions?
So the first thing that we do is actually we have the ability to analyze any code to see which components were AI or LLM generated. So not only can we identify, but also whether or not you have the proper licensing to it. And this is a critical component to AI going forward.
What are the 3 key things you look forward to when you enroll a partner in your ecosystem?
So the first thing is typically the regional presence and relationship. So we look for partners that are well connected to the ecosystem of resellers if it's a distributor, or the reseller connections into the customer base that we're looking to get into. The second one is
when you enter into a new region, it's a lot of dynamics which change for you as a person, as an organization. How do you approach customers, let's say somebody in Europe, in UK, in Singapore, in Australia, in UAE with the same solution?
So if you look at some of the government regulations that I touched on earlier, they're slightly different in the UAE than even in neighboring countries, right? In Oman or Saudi or wherever it may be. So what we try to provide them is with the solutions that are scalable and flexible to adapt to those local regulations to meet all those requirements.
Hello and welcome to Spire Connect, powered by Spire Solutions, where innovation meets conversation. While the world is worried about endpoints and firewalls and mobile phones and IoT, at the end, in all these places, what you find is an application. And today in the studio, we have Tom Herrmann, Global Vice President, Channel and Alliances at BlackDuck. So what exactly is BlackDuck doing, and why do they think they are changing the landscape of application security? Welcome, Tom.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Everybody has a separate industry. SAST is a separate industry. DAST is a separate industry. Why do you want to take these vendors out of business?
It's essentially a differentiator for us. If we look at what customers are looking for, what they're asking for, nobody looks at just one aspect of cybersecurity or application security testing. They look at a broader range of everything from what's in my software that I need to worry about licensing. How do I test software as it's in development? How do I test software once it's been packaged and so on? So we provide that differentiation by allowing customers to start their journey with a specific solution and then be able to expand through all the integrations that we have through the rest of our portfolio.
Your job ensures that you travel a lot.
I do.
You're the VP Channel, VP Alliances. What are the 3 key things you look forward to when you enroll a partner in your ecosystem?
So the first thing is typically the regional presence and relationships, right? It's everything. It's the relationship business being in the partner business. So we look for partners that are well connected to the ecosystem of resellers if it's a distributor, or the reseller connections into the customer base that we're looking to get into. That's the key aspect. The second one is the value that the actual partner provides. So in this case, with Spire as a distributor for us in the region, they are true value add distributor because they invest in the technical resources. Our solution requires a technical sale, but we don't have the scale or the willingness, honestly, to scale lots of our own resources in the region. So we rely on partners to do that for us, right? And Spire is a good example of where we have the investment level that they're putting into technical resources, sales resources, marketing. Podcasts such as this is a good example, right, of just getting the message out on our behalf, because we're really looking for them to be our local extension to our company.
If I am a CIO who meets you at a coffee shop in GITEX, and we happen to talk, and I have 2 takeaways to take after my conversation with you, what would those 2 be?
So the first one would be our capabilities in AI, since that's such a big buzzword in the industry. Everybody asks about it. The second one is around regulatory compliance. If you look at local governments, new regulations around cybersecurity, as you mentioned earlier, application security testing being one of the key things, because ultimately what goes wrong is the application. If you look at all the major breaches that make the media, the news, it was an application that got breached, right? So that's what we try to prevent. And AI being this huge proliferation of code now going forward. And I've read statistics about in the next 2 years, there'll be more code generated than in the history of code generation, right? Things like that. It requires what we call true scale application security, which is really the broader approach of how do you deal with this vast proliferation of all this code to make sure it's secure? Because just because it's AI generated doesn't mean it's any more secure. It introduces new risks in the market because there is such a broad source for all this code coming in from all over the place. And you don't even know if there is compliance with all the different licensing. You could be a large language model, could be pulling in code that's proprietary. So now you're opening yourself to a lawsuit if you're using somebody else's proprietary code.
As a CISO, when I present to my board, I am looking at ways to share with them that your business is safe.
Yep.
And the board believes if I add application security as a layer on top, it is going to slow down my progress. Do you think it's a myth or a fact?
It's a perception that's out there for sure, right? Everybody looks at any additional tool that you implement as more complexity in the environment. So from a CISO perspective, I don't blame them for thinking that way. But I think the way it gets positioned and the way we try to position it with our partnerships is in terms of the tangible benefits you actually get from that investment in the tools. Because again, you're reducing the risk, right? Yeah, you can spend a few dollars on buying a tool, or you can spend a lot more dollars on being breached and then having to deal with that issue.
When you enter into a new region, it's a lot of dynamics which change for you as a person, as an organization. How do you approach customers, let's say somebody in Europe, in UK, in Singapore, in Australia, in Dubai, in UAE, with the same solution?
It's focused basically on the types of environment that we encounter in all these regions. So there's different maturity levels. That's the way I would position it. So if you look at some of the government regulations that I touched on earlier, they're slightly different in the UAE than even in neighboring countries, right? In Oman or Saudi or wherever it may be. Certainly different from a country like Singapore or US, where there's all these different types of government regulations. You hear things about European regulations that are coming out, right? That's something that a lot of companies, especially multinational companies, struggle with. And if you look at organizations that are based in Dubai, they don't just operate in the UAE, right? They don't just operate here. They operate on a broader basis. So what we try to provide them is with the solutions that are scalable and flexible to adapt to those local regulations to meet all those requirements.
In our next segment, I'm going to share a statement and you need to classify whether it's a myth or a fact.
Okay.
So you can start your answer by saying it's a myth and then you can give us the answer.
Okay.
Application security is for enterprise customers only.
It's a myth. Absolutely a myth. Because every company has the same challenges, right? You don't want to be breached. You make sure your applications are secure, that you're testing everything in the applications. So it's absolutely a myth to think that it's only for large companies that are heavily, enterprise driven or regulatory driven. It applies to everything from small to large.
Unless I have an in-house team doing DevOps, I don't need application security solutions.
Not true. It's also a myth. Because ultimately, even if you buy packaged software, we still find code issues with some of the packaged software because either it's hasn't been tested completely or somebody rushed through things or they used some testing tools that didn't catch all the different nuances that needed to be tested. So even very large packaged software, and I won't mention some of the very large companies out there, we still find flaws.
Application security solution providers do not adhere to data sovereignty rules.
Also a myth. Because we have to make sure that we're compliant with everything that's out there, which is a big focus for us. Going back to the regulatory requirements, we have to understand whether it's executive orders that come out of the US, for example, or it's Cyber Resiliency Act in Europe. That's a regulation that's coming out. It's something local that's coming out in Saudi or UAE. We always have to stay on top of that, which is also something we rely heavily on our partners for, right? We're not the experts on all the local regulations. So we rely on people that are in the region that are impacted by it mostly to help guide us on what those regulations are so we can then help comply with that.
Application security solutions are expensive.
It's also a myth. It really depends on what level of investment you need to make. You can start out small and inexpensive in certain areas. What you do want to watch out for is solutions that are just good enough, because that good enough does not work. It has to be something that can test what your requirements are. And again, various companies have various requirements, and that's fine. But you want to make sure that you invest in the right areas, and it doesn't have to be at a huge cost.
If you had to explain application security and its relevance to my 10-year-old child, how would you do that?
So my analogy has to deal with a house. If you have a house, you have doors and windows. You can have all your doors is closed, right? That's fine. Maybe that's your network security. You can have all the windows closed, and that may be your infrastructure security or whatever, or endpoint security. But if you leave the back door unlocked, somebody's still going to come into your house, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I equate application security for. It's sort of the added leg of the stool, if you will. You got all the big names: network security, infrastructure security, endpoint security. Application security ultimately is the one that's the most overlooked, but it's the most critical. Because again, as I mentioned earlier, all the major breaches you hear about in the news, ultimately it's an application that somebody penetrated.
I think it's a great analogy, and my son would definitely correlate to this one. Now, everybody in the world is obsessed with LLMs,
Yep.
with generative AI,
Yep.
agentic AI, genetic AI. How is BlackDuck looping all this information into their solutions?
So the first thing that we do is actually we have the ability to analyze any code to see which components were AI or LLM generated.
Wow.
So that's a big differentiator for us. We used to do that very well in the open source environment, be able to identify what part of the code was open source. Does the customer have the right licensing to go with that open source code? We're now doing the same thing with AI generated code. So not only can we identify which bits and bytes and components are AI generated, but also whether or not you have the proper licensing to it. And this is a critical component to AI going forward, because as I mentioned earlier, with LLMs, they'll pull information from all sorts of different sources and places, but you don't always have the guarantee that code that's being pulled in actually belongs in more of an open source type of environment, right? It could be some proprietary code that somebody has the rights to that accidentally gets pulled into your code, and now you're in a license violation and potentially a legal law case.
UAE is one of the first countries in the world to have a designation called Chief AI Officer, mandatory for all government organizations.
Yep.
If I'm a Chief AI Officer of a government agency and I happen to meet you, and I need 2 use cases from you to make my life easier, what would those 2 use cases be?
The first one is just analyzing what's in your code. That's what I mentioned about knowing what part of it is AI generated, because again, that comes with its own implications. The second one is understanding the breadth and the scale of AI. Like I mentioned earlier, in the next few years, you'll have more code AI generated than in the whole history of anybody ever developing software and code. So dealing with that breadth and that scale at speed is the big differentiator that they have to look for. You could have traditional tools that'll take you days to analyze all this vast code. You need to do it in seconds or minutes, right, at best. So that's the 2 things, is understanding the licensing piece of it and understanding how to do it at speed and scale.
So let's say I got approvals from my board. I have you guys on board. How would a normal project timeline look for a BlackDuck project?
So it depends on the complexity and depends on how much you've already done in terms of working ahead and identifying where your key needs are. It could be anything from days to weeks. It depends on what you're doing and what pieces you're implementing in what order. And that goes back to the broader portfolio that BlackDuck has, where you can start with one area, just analyzing your code. Then you can move into identifying what some of the development flaws may be that you need to fix. So it's kind of a whole journey that it takes you through. And it depends on what your priorities are within your development cycle.
And once it is deployed, how many people do I need on per day basis to manage your solution?
Not a whole lot. Again, it depends on the scale of your organization. Right? We sell to companies that have 5 developers. We sell to companies that have 50,000 developers, right? So it really depends on how many resources and how big you are. And then the other alternative to that is we also work with a lot of partners that deliver that as a service, right? So you can have the tools you own yourself, or you can go to one of our partners that delivers those testing services as a managed service. And that's another option. So you don't have to have lots of headcount. You can have a few people. If you have the software in-house, you can have somebody come in and manage it on your behalf, or you can have a larger team that does it all in-house.
So Tom, now my next question, which is beyond technology.
Yeah.
You guys are called BlackDuck.
Yep.
Do you guys any relationship to the movie Black Swan?
No, unfortunately not, but it would be a cool marketing ploy.
How did this name come by into the picture?
There's a lot of history to that, and I've heard lots of different stories. So BlackDuck was a company that was acquired by Synopsys, which recently sold the division that I was in at Synopsys. And we decided, because we still owned the naming rights to BlackDuck and was a well-known product in the industry, especially in cybersecurity and application security, we went back to the BlackDuck name. And from what I heard, the original CEO was very children's book friendly, children friendly. And I think there was something about ducks, or a black duck, like a black sheep in the family.
Oh.
So that to me is, it's probably the most interesting story. I've heard lots of other stories too, but this one's the one that resonates with me the most.
When an acquisition happens or when a sellout happens,
Yeah.
does it slow down the technical team and the development of the product?
It actually doesn't. No, it was a surprise for me. I'd never gone through a spin out before. I've been acquired before, but never spun out of a large organization into a separate private company. But it actually really accelerated things for us because less complexity, not being part of this big, large, I think Synopsys is like the 10th or 11th largest software company in the world. So once we became independent, it gave us a lot more flexibility to do things at a much more rapid pace than we could before, having to work through all the management layers in a large company. So from a technology perspective, we've seen a lot of acceleration there. In my business, personally, having to deal with a lot of complexities around the world and local regulations and legal and so on, it's also accelerated my ability to work with partners in multiple geographies, where a company like Synopsys might have looked at it as a little bit more of a risk factor. And do we really want to enter that market? Ultimately, we would, but it just takes longer, right? It's now much nicer for me to be able to get things done. If we decide that we want to expand our business with Spire in Oman or Qatar or whatever it might be, we don't have to go through, 12 levels of approval anymore. It's much simpler.
So I want to take a little off track from our ongoing discussion about technology.
Yeah.
And let's say if you want to be a technical person, you do engineering.
Yeah.
Right? If you want to be somebody in sales, you have courses where you can learn sales from.
Yeah.
There is nobody who's teaching how to manage the channel. What about alliances?
Yeah.
If there are 3 books you would recommend to somebody to learn about channel, what would those be?
There's a number. I don't know if I can narrow it down to 3 because alliances or channel is such a broad topic. You have to understand a little bit of everything. If I look at a day in my life, it may start out with some sales escalation or a customer thing. It may be something technical. It may be a legal thing where we're looking at a contract or some terms in a contract. It is going to be a technical discussion with our engineering group of something that maybe a customer is asking through a partner. It could be a finance thing where we're talking about payment terms with a certain partner. It's so broad. And then you have to be probably a jack of all trades in the partner world to be able to switch constantly from one major topic to the next major topic throughout the day and back and forth. So what I typically tell people is understand the overall sales process, because that's the foundation to working with partners, because ultimately they become your sales arm with the customer facing aspect of it. Understand all the operational aspects that have to happen in the background, as how do we even take the orders, run it through a partner, and how the payment terms work, everything else. So there's no clear answer in terms of just limiting to 3 books. It's really any business book is applicable to the partner world. And anything that has to deal with organizational structure and organizational efficiency is also really good in terms of literature.
The channel guys love the sales guys. Myth or a fact?
It's somewhere in between. I'm going to give you the honest answer.
Now that's a channel guy talking to a sales guy.
Channel talking to a sales guy. Exactly. No, ultimately, a channel success is based on sales success, right? There's no question about that. We spend a lot of time, my team and myself, working with a sales organization to make sure that they understand how to work with partners. And again, this is where a lot of regional differences come in. You have some regions that are much more skilled and used to working with partners in sort of a multi-tier model. And then you got some geographies where the salespeople have that attitude, well, it's my deal. I don't want to share with anybody else. I don't want to give up any control. So you have to kind of find the sweet spot in between. And oftentimes it comes down to a little bit of a give and take. And we've had some great success with partnerships where our salespeople finally understood that relinquishing a little bit of control really pays off in the long run. They get so much more back when they build a relationship with a partner and you're going in hand into accounts. The deals are bigger. We've had some great scenarios. And that's my favorite thing to do with our sales teams is to talk to them about, hey, you may have a $1 or $2 million relationship in the account. I can give you a partner that sells 700 million to the same account. So guess who's got the more strategic relationships in the account, right? And ultimately, salespeople pick up on that. It's like, wait a second, if I'm here in the organization, the partner is way up here in the organization, right? There is an advantage of me actually working with that partner piece of it, if you will, right?
You work with channel partners across the globe. How is a channel partner in Singapore different from the one sitting in London, in New York, and Dubai?
So in general, channel partners tend to be very similar across the geography. So ultimately, they're always interested in doing the right thing for the customer, right? That's what it comes down. Customer first. So understanding that where I do see some nuances is in the skill sets. Some partners are just transactionally focused. They just want to get in, do the deal. Maybe the customer asks them to, from a purchasing or procurement perspective, to simplify the process. And that's all they do is just push paper. Other partners are a lot more invested in actually understanding the technology, not just our technology, but the broader industry. So, if a customer asks a partner about, what about this AI thing? What do I do here, right? They have to be skilled and knowledgeable to be able to answer that and then understand which vendors to bring in. So this is where we expect them to come in and obviously position us when it comes to the application security side of the broader cybersecurity umbrella. But that's where I see the differences in regions. You get some more technical focused countries where that is just a given, and you get others where it's a little bit more just pushing the paper aspect.
If I'm a salesperson and a partner, I have so many vendors to focus on.
Yeah.
How do you get my mind share?
I do it primarily through understanding or educating the seller on the value proposition and how our solution, especially that broader portfolio, becomes that differentiator again. Yeah, you can go sell 12 different point solutions, or you can go with a simplified version of one vendor that has that broader portfolio. And that's typically how I start. And then ultimately it comes down to what's in it for the salesperson, right? We tend to be very flexible, and we tend to look at making sure that the partner gets the right level of margin that makes it interesting to work with us, that the salesperson ultimately gets the right commission plans that we can accelerate through the solutions that we have, right? We spend a lot of time on making sure we have that sales to sales mapping to where we support the salesperson at the channel partner to be more successful. Ultimately it comes to, how much money do they put in their pocket?
True. I think that's very relevant because you can have a great product, but if the salespeople are not taking you to the right meetings, it's of no use. And when you are in that meeting, you do need a technical buy-in from their technical people.
That's right.
So is there a specific partner program you have which has been rolled out where you train the technical people?
Yes, we do. So we have a certification program and training program. We call it an enablement program for our partners. Everything from basic sales training. Actually, let me take a step back. It starts with understanding just application security, right? Because some of the partners that we sign up may have a background in some other aspect of cybersecurity, but they've never really worked in application security. Now they're selling to some of the same personas, like the CISO and others in the organization and development. So we start out with making sure that they understand what application security is and application security testing. Then we take them through the journey of, if you're a salesperson, here's how you do the value proposition. If you're a technical or pre-sales person, here's your technical track and understanding the differentiation of the solutions, all the way down to if you're a service or delivery type of person or you have that capability. We teach you how to implement our solutions, how to do some other services that you can wrap around our solutions. So we have different tracks for the different type of persona.
Today, you and me are talking on this platform called Spire Connect, which is powered by Spire Solutions, where innovation meets conversation.
Yep.
Do you think the world needs more platforms like this?
They do. You have to get the words out, right? It's really understanding and being able to communicate to a broader audience what this is all about, whether it's the partnership between BlackDuck and Spire, it's what else Spire provides in terms of solutions and vendors that they work with, their capabilities, their ecosystem of partners they work with. The more word you can get out about these types of things, the better it is for the customer, which is ultimately what our focus is, right? We want to make sure customers understand what Spire can do, what BlackDuck can do, what their local reseller that they may be working with can do for them. It all starts with having these types of conversations to help educate, the broader environment.
I think you rightly said that yes, technologies come, buzzwords come and go. At the end, what remains is the conversations. Thank you so much for joining in, Tom.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yes, conversations do stay, and that's what we are trying to find over here. You are tuned into Spire Connect, powered by Spire Solutions, where innovation meets conversation. Thank you for watching.